Good day, Aussie bonsai bloke here, go.
Today I'm going to do some work on this Japanese red pine. I know it's way too late, should have been done in probably late December, early January to get the second lot of buds to either flush out or at least form. Here I am just before winter. I'm going to cut it back now and just hope that in Australia here we have a warm enough winter. I'm just hoping that our winter is warm enough to allow the buds to form, that they'll still shoot out in spring. And if they do, the new shoots will be pretty small because they won't have that long to form. It's a bit of an experiment. I'm confident the tree won't die. It's pretty healthy, as you can see. It's been out in the full sun, and you know how hot it's been. If you've been following my videos, it's been pretty bad, pretty dry, pretty windy. And this thing here, this Japanese red pine's just thrived. Really healthy. So I'm just going to cut it back pretty hard today. I've let it grow too long. I've got wire on it which is cutting in. I'm going to have to take the wire off. I'll probably take the wire off after I cut it back because at the moment it's sort of hidden in there. You can't really see it properly. So yeah, I'll get to that. I'll give you a spin now. As you can see, really healthy. Growing really well. This is the only pine I have. Oh no, I think I have a radiata pine, but this is the only other pine that I have. So I'll work on this one. Like I said, take the wire off, trim it up, see what it looks like at the end, and see if it forms new buds for winter. In the meantime, I'm going to show you another tree I've got, the Crepe myrtle in Austumn Colours. It's looking really good at the moment. It's fully trimmed. So I'm going to show you that one because that's pretty cool, and it's only like that for about 2 or 3 weeks every year. So I'll show you that one, and then I'll get back to this tree. No worries. Cheers. G'day guys. Just wanted to show you this Crepe myrtle in all the beautiful autumn colours that it's in. It's nearly lost half its leaves, but it's still got a fair few on, so it looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to show you, give you a spin of this one. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We don't have any autumn shows, so you can't put deciduous trees in shows in autumn, but still something pretty cool to show you. Part of the reason I love deciduous trees, they've got so many different looks that they have during the year. So that's it, that's the crepe myrtle. Give you a close up of the bark. All the leaves. Pretty cool. Anyway, back to the tree. Alright, hope you enjoyed looking at that crepe myrtle that we had. Now we're onto the Japanese red pine. And I'll just do some trimming. There's some wire in here like I said. So my plan is basically wherever there's 3 or whatever, I'll cut it back to 2. And then after I've cut it back to 2 shoots, I'm going to shorten the 2 shoots. So if there's 3, I'll cut it back to 2. Then I'll shorten them from really long back to only, you know, a few needles. And see how it goes from there, basically. I let this thing grow way too long. I'll probably do it all on video because, to be honest, there's it'll be pretty quick actually, to be honest. I'll just bring you a bit closer. Okay, so to be honest, it's going to be pretty quick anyway, and I'll just explain a few things. I'm not great on pines by no means. I haven't done much in the way of pine work at all. This pine came from a seedling about 5 years ago, I believe. So as you can see, they grow pretty quick. Alright, let's start cutting. Okay, so here I've got 3 here. 1, 2, 3. I've got a really fat one here, a really short one. So what I might do is cut the really fat one off with no needles on it. Cut that one off and keep the 2 little ones. I'll cut the bigger one back to a small shoot, and the really little one in here, you can't really see it too well, but that little thing there, I won't cut it all, I'll leave it because it's such a short little thing anyway and it won't shoot till next year. And then there's another branch back further where it divided, and I'll cut that back fairly short also, so you're left with that little bit there. I'm not sure what to do with all these long needles. They're out near the tip, so I can't rip them all off, otherwise if you rip all the needles off it dies. You have to leave needles on to draw the, I believe to draw the water up, or the sap up, so that you get new buds forming. If you go and rip them off now and leave a bare branch, there's a pretty massive likelihood you're going to lose that whole branch. The cat's come up for a bit of a cat. He's been a bit of a sook tonight. We've had a tiny bit of rain. He's getting a bit cold, I think. So we got the cat here. Anyway, hopefully he buggers off. He's alright, but if he keeps sniffing around too long, I'll have to kick him off the bench. Okay. Cut that one back. And there's a short one next to it, so that was 2 divided to 2. This one here is already divided to 2. There's actually 3, so I'll cut one off. Okay, well, there you go. I buggered that up. I accidentally cut the 2 off and only left 1, so that wasn't great. Bit of a silly mistake. If I spin a bit more here, you can see I've got one little branch out to the side here. And I'll just take the tip off. And then this big fat one. So I'm going to take this big fat one right back and leave a fat stub there with only 2 pairs of needles on it, hoping for some new buds and for it to grow. So yeah, so I have left this grow too long. I'll do the same here, cut it back. Better get into some faster mode here, otherwise it's going to take a long time. So I'll just cut them all back short, cut them back to 2. Don't want to spend too long doing this. Not for the video anyway. Normally I'd spend a bit longer than this, but to be honest it's not a great tree anyway, so if I make the wrong decision, well, 1, I can live with it, and 2, it's not the best tree and it'll shoot again anyway, so well, I assume it will. So here we've got it dividing into 2. So keep that. It's going to be hard for you to see where it divides because we've got a lot of needles here. And although I could take some of these off, it's sort of limited to how many I can take off because the needles are actually quite... There's not that many needles really. It's only on a shoot. They're only about that, in a clump that big that I'm cutting back to of needles. It's just that they're long, they sort of skew the vision a bit, I guess you could say. And I'll just do this around the whole thing. Keep going. Here I've got 4 coming, so I'm going to take 2 more off here. Pretty unusual to get 4 from one spot, although not really. You can get up to 5-ish in a circle. Okay, so even the ones that just have a really small shoot on, I'm cutting them anyway to hopefully even up the growth so that all of them reshoot. And like I say, just cutting back to something. As you can see, I'm taking a lot off pretty quickly. Yeah, so I got this as a seedling a few years ago, four years ago, and I experimented on this thing. You know, I cut it back fairly hard at the start to where there was almost no branching, just as an experiment to see how it would respond. I cut it back to just needles. I did do that in sort of late summer and it responded well, whereas this, we're getting into late autumn, almost early winter. Definitely the wrong time of year to do it. If you're in a really cold part of the country or another country, definitely don't do it during autumn. This is probably best done if you're in a colder climate and you're trying to get the second flush, or at least trying to get the buds for next year to form without elongating too much. Because what happens if you leave it go for a whole season, you'll get too much elongated growth. But if you cut it back a bit earlier, you'll get shortened growth and the buds will still form for the next spring. So probably if you're in a really cold climate, again, I'm no expert, but I would say that you would cut it sort of midsummer would be my guess. You'd cut it back midsummer and then you wouldn't cut it again, and you'd let it flush out in the spring and again in the midsummer. So you cut it twice a year, because the red pine is technically a two flush pine, a little bit like the black pine. In a colder climate, it won't actually flush twice, but what it will do is it'll form the buds for the next year after you cut it back hard in the summer. And to be honest, even here, if it does do a second flush, it's fairly weak, because last year I did cut it at what I think was the right time of year, and it was a fairly weak secondary growth on the ones that did grow, and a lot of them pretty much just formed buds for the spring, and not really so much as far as a second flush. It was more just forming buds. Okay, so yeah, really healthy, really long internodes here. I can work on getting them down later, and a lot, sorry, not the internodes so much, fairly long needles. The internodes are actually still quite short on this, which is amazing. There's a lot of internodes. Okay, so I think too, as a tree gets, probably missed a little bit there, but anyway, as a tree gets more and more developed and you get more and more finer branching, the tree has to distribute all of its energy to a wider area and more branches, and that helps also in reducing the needle length, so you get shorter and shorter needles. And also, if you stay on top of it more and do more constant pruning, the same thing will happen. You'll get smaller needles over a lot more branching and more ramification. So believe it or not, although it still looks quite thick here, it's almost cut back, because I'm almost to the point where all the long branches that I can cut have been cut. So like I say, it hasn't been a very long video. I've kept you on for the most part. And there's probably a lot of stuff I'm doing wrong, to be honest. If you're someone that's a bit of an expert looking at this, you'll probably laugh, but like I say, I don't have many pines, so I'm sort of learning, and this is how I learn, you know. All of my bonsai that I've learned like this. I've just done a bit here and a bit there, and pretty much just winged it in the back shed. Just cut it, see how it responds, and I've done that with everything that I have pretty much. You know, haven't really joined a club. I have watched a lot of YouTube, so I've been mucking around the shed for 10 years, that's how I've learnt. I'll just rip off some of the ridiculously long ones and leave some there. But anyway, it looks really healthy anyway. Okay, so the next thing, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty happy with how much I've cut back on all the branches that I can. Everything's been shortened. Just looking for anything I've missed right now. Looks that I pretty much haven't. So like you can see, there wasn't actually a lot to cut back. I'll just gather up what I did cut and show you that. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the cat next to me. He's been there the whole time, just chilling. Got a little spider here, just a little one. Not sure what kind it is, only a little one. Won't bite. Some sort of a jumping spider. They don't scare me too much, only the big ones. Now, that's all that I cut off. It's a fair bit, you know, probably, it's probably nearly half of the foliage. But there's so much on there and it's so healthy. Really just seems to enjoy the hot climate that we have here. I don't know why, but it does. Loves it. Must come from a fairly warm climate. So now I'll just show you the wire that I've got to take off. I've got to take all the wire off, which is a bit of a pain. Not really looking forward to it. Could be a good half-hourish job. Maybe more, depending on how much is in there. Okay, so you can see it's bit in a bit. Caused a bit of swelling. A lot of it hasn't bit in. It's only a few branches that really grew strong that did. Although, looking at the more I look at it, the more it's bit in. So a fair bit. I had to take all that bloody wire off. Won't really matter in the long run, you know. They get enough bark. I'll just try and show you the trunk down here. They do get enough bark that in the long run, it'll cover it up okay, I reckon. To think that only when I got it was probably this big, the whole tree, only 5 years ago, so I do grow pretty well. Anyway, I'll take the wire off and then I'll give you a final show of the tree. No worries, cheers. Okay, so here I'll just give you a quick demo of the wire. I thought I'd at least do that for you. This is a really bad branch. Not sure that I can even get it all out. I think unwinding's the only way, but I'd have to be super careful not to unwind the bark, otherwise this whole limb here will die. This one here. So I've cut it. And the only way possible to get this out would be to just really carefully unwind it. Always paying attention to the direction that the wire goes so that you're pulling it out in the exact line of where it's cut in, because if you pull it out in any other direction, it'll strip this whole piece of bark off and your whole branch will definitely die without a word of a doubt. So do that exactly in the line. Okay, when it's bit in this bad. I'll show you another one after, but okay, so I've got that one off. Probably more luck than skill. Another thing, it's very hard to get in to cut them when you've got them so wound up like that. So same thing, I'll just pull on that. Try and be very, very careful that you just keep it in the same line. So there you can see the line of it is that line. You'll pull in the same line so that it unwinds in the same line, and then when you get around, pull in the same line and hope for the best. If you have this on the very bottom of a trunk, you could possibly leave it and it actually fattens it up. You can see that it's fattened up that branch. Some fairly ugly scars on there. I'll see how it heals. If it doesn't heal very well, I'll have to cut it off. But the thing is, probably from the outline of that tree, it's a fairly significant, you can see the branching on that. It's reasonably significant, so if I was to just go and cut it off, there'll be a big hole in the tree, and the likelihood of something else growing there is very slim. You could probably graft something on there, but I'm not skilled enough to do that. And another thing too, if you want to rewire this now and put it in a different direction, you got to be so careful not to snap the back of that branch there where it come from. I'll show you something a bit more simple now. What you'd normally unwire if you hadn't let it go for as long as I had. Okay, so this is what you'd normally unwire. Hasn't really cut in too badly. There's the cat's tail that went in front of the camera. And you can either unwind it like this. The cat's going back again. Or you can just snip. I normally just snip it at each curl that goes around the branch. And then what you end up with is it all falls off for you. With any luck. And you're left with no wire. And I think that's a safer way in general, but if it is cut in really deep, unwinding it's probably slightly better than trying to cut it, because you just can't get in there to cut it without doing a lot of damage to it. Alright, I'll unwire the tree and then I'll get back to you. G'day, welcome back. So I got all the wire off. There's a branch here, I'll show you the branch. There's actually another branch in there that I can't get the wire out, so I'm going to leave it in. I'll show you what happens. So, hang on. Try and focus on that. So what happens is where it bites in, it gets really fat. And that's good actually, like if you're going to fatten up the bottom of the trunk. But up the top of the tree, you don't really want that. And there's a point here where I just couldn't get it out at all. There's wire buried deep inside here. And if you try to pull this out, one, I can't. Probably physically can't. And two, you can see what happens. See that? That's what I was talking about. If you peel it when it's too deep, it'll peel all the bark, cambium layer off, and that branch would die anyway. I cut the branch off, but if it's a really integral part of the tree and you don't mind a little bit of fattening where it's bitten in, you can cut as much wire out as you can and leave the wire in there. There's one spot in the tree I have done that, only because it was a really integral branch. Where it's going to fatten up's not that great, but at least the branch is going to stay. So, yeah. That's the wire off. Show you the tree. Okay, pretty much done. As I said, the wire's off. Branches are all cut back. I'm going to put it back on the bench, let it grow. I'll put it in a pot soon, you know. It's growing really fast, really vigorous. So another year or two, I might even put it in a pot. I'm debating, let me know what you think about this, but I'm debating lifting up the whole tree like that and forward, and then pushing these branches down. I don't know what that looks like to you, but I'm thinking about doing that, and I think it gives a trunk a little bit more shape. But anyway, at the moment it's like that, which is fine. But I think that'll just give it a little bit more interest. That little jumping spider's back. See if if I can catch him. Okay. Got the jumping spider back on my hand here. Well, I'll try. As you can see, not all spiders scare me too much, but some do. Big ones, big hairy ones. Our big huntsman, that scares the crap out of me. And also those black widows. Okay, so I'll give you a spin of the tree going out. No worries, cheers for watching, hope you enjoyed. Please don't fully take my advice on this one. The trimming part of it and the wiring part of it, you know, is fine. It's pretty sound advice, but just the time of the year. Don't take the time of the year that I did this. I would recommend to do it midsummer to do that second prune, and then let it go until the following spring and let it grow. So really only a midsummer prune. But if you live in a hotter climate like me, and you get fairly mild winters, I wouldn't suggest to go and cut your branches now going into the early winter, but maybe I'd just suggest to keep an eye on this tree. I'll do an update and I'll show you how the thing advances, and hopefully it grows fine next spring. So I'd probably suggest for you to wait till next spring if you live in a warmer climate and you're thinking about cutting it back. End of autumn, start of winter, which is what I've done here. I mainly did this because I didn't have time, because, you know, moving house and all of that. And if I was to leave it out where it was and then let it grow next spring, the whole thing would have elongated way too much and have all its growth and tips, and you cut it back and there's a possibility the whole thing could die. So I pretty much had to do this. I'm going to see how it goes. I'll show you how it goes, and that's about it. No worries. Cheers for watching Aussie Bonsai Bloke. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out my Instagram, and I'll do a spin of the tree going out. No worries. Cheers. Oh, one last thing before I do give you a final spin of the tree going out, is this actually does have a pretty good nabari, as far as I can tell, a root system. There's one big one here, a littler one there, some going out the back there. I think one going out there too, so it could be a good nabari. So when I repot it in, you know, a year or maybe even next spring, see how we go, it could end up being quite a good tree. No worries, I'll give you a spin.